Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews, stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs. Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing you by. Shine, flies, be patient, 'cause good things happen in time. We gon' get it right, we gon' get it right, we gon' get it right. We gon' get it right.
Protests and anthems, yes, we chanting. A movement of people, it's like we dance into the ministry of. It's the energy of, in memory of them that we love. The trinity of the people, the peace, the power, the truth. We speak the powers even louder. We can say it blacker, we can say it prouder. A woman vice president that went to Howard. Now we talk helping black businesses, and our differences is magnificent. Bringing light to the point where the prisons is. I was told good life is where forgiveness lives. The ascension is to leave what's left behind and feed the seeds with deeds that bless the mind, caress the mind, and question justify. With you and God in time, I best align.
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing you by. Shine, flies, be patient, 'cause good things happen in time. We gon' get it right, we gon' get it right. We gon' get it right. We gon' get it right.
How can I be a better father, son, a better grandson, honoring Fannie Lou's and the Fred Hamptons, the Harriets, the chariots that carry us to various areas that marry us to progress. Yeah, we the harvest, the lovely days and midnight marauders. Even through charges and days of darkness, no, we in the hands of the greatest artists. I see it in the waters, I see it in our daughters. They can be bridges that know no borders. For so long, them folk try to ignore us. So we got the ballot boxes to vote for us. Peace to Stacey and the people of Georgia, who galvanize so that we can move forward. Steps are ordered with the presence of mind. Everything's more beautiful in time.
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing you by. Shine, flies, be patient, 'cause
good things happen in time. You are listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, your host and chief White House correspondent. I'm in touch, and so guess what? You be in touch. Follow me on all the social media platforms at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ, and there I am, fresh for you to follow. If you haven't already, download the KBLA app. That way you can listen to us live or on demand while you're on the go. And speaking of being on the go, if you just subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast, you can listen to us anywhere and everywhere. Now, with that, it's time for your national news roundup. It's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. And kicking us off, did you see former fire chief Kristen Crowley? Did you see her today in Los Angeles? Not far from our home station. Well, the former fire chief lost her bid to get her job back, winning not one, but a whole 2 votes. The Los Angeles Times reporting that the Los Angeles City Council rejected former fire chief Kristen Crowley's bid to get her job back, leading one of the nation's largest fire departments over fierce objections from the firefighters union. The council voted 13-2 against Crowley's reinstatement, handing Mayor Bass a much-needed political victory and show of support from the city's legislative branch. You all might remember that Mayor Bass was in Ghana when the Palisades fire broke out, leaving Council President Marquise Harris Dawson as acting mayor, and delivered a choppy performance in the days after she returned. As reported by the LA Times, Crowley used today's hearing to push back publicly for the first time against arguments that Mayor Bass offered for terminating her. Seated before the council, she also argued that she was facing retaliation for publicly highlighting a lack of resources at her department. Councilmember Padilla, who represents the central San Fernando Valley, spoke in favor of the firings, criticizing Crowley for a decision to discuss the fire department's budget with the news media while the Palisades fire was still raging. Crowley's bid for reinstatement was almost certain to fail, given the fact that she needed 10 votes, or 2/3 majority. The only votes in support of her reinstatement came from council members Monica Rodriguez and Tracy Park, both of whom have been Crowley supporters. Nevertheless, today's proceedings created a headache for Mayor Bass, who ousted Crowley as chief nearly 2 weeks ago. Firefighters repeatedly aired complaints that the fire department has, for way too long, has gone without sufficient funds. In fact, Chung Ho, who serves on the board of the United Firefighters of Los Angeles City Local 112, urged council members to reinstate Crowley, saying she was fired for telling the truth about the department's lack of resources. Now, all I know is I saw Mayor Bass deliver a press conference. I know during that press conference, Mayor Bass said, number one, that there were about 1,000 fire engines that could have been deployed that weren't on Crowley's watch during this wildfire. And she also mentioned that he had asked Crowley to do an after-action report. Now, for a lot of us, after-action reports are par for the course. Something happens, we want to understand what happened, what went wrong, what we could have done better, so we can learn from it. And the fact that Crowley was resistant to doing an after-action report, that never sat well with me. Did that sit well with you? Sound off in a More Perfect group chat on YouTube, and let us know. Let us know if this sits well with you. But in other news, 30 officers have been accused of facilitating gladiator fights among minors at the LA area juvenile hall. NBC News reporting that California's Attorney General just this past Monday announced the unsealing of an indictment charging 30 detention officers assigned to an LA area juvenile hall with child abuse for allegedly allowing and sometimes encouraging so-called gladiator fights among youths. At the heart of the grand jury indictment is the allegations that officers stood by as children and teenagers at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall engaged in the fights. That's what the Attorney General said in a statement. The detention center is in Downey, about 13 miles south of downtown Los Angeles. The Office of Attorney General Rob Bonta said that there were at least 69 fights in the second half of 2023, with 143 children and teens between the ages of 12 and 18. Some fights resulted in physical injuries. And so, again, 30 officers accused of facilitating these gladiator fights among minors at the LA area juvenile hall. When I saw this story, I right away thought of, though it's a different context, but still similar, the movie Nickel Boys, where in that facility, there were also juvenile fights that were being facilitated by folks there that were supposed to be law enforcement. And so another reason why we got to keep our eyes on our kids, whether they're in our homes or whether they're in the custody of the state. But speaking of keeping our eyes on folks, did you all see this story about CBS News? It kind of flew under the radar, but it's worth mentioning. It's been reported that folks over at CBS are a bit shell-shocked as the Paramount merger is really close to completion. Last October, Jeff Shell, who's the veteran media executive, set to serve as president of Paramount Global after its merger with Skydance Media is finalized. He convened a meeting with CBS News chief Wendy McMahon, 60 Minutes boss Bill Owens, and a whole bunch of government relations officials. And at the time, Donald Trump was loudly railing against 60 Minutes over that interview with Kamala Harris. Y'all remember that? Where he was fixating on a baseless editing gripe that he absurdly claimed amounted to election interference. Well, he demanded that CBS News release an unedited transcript of the sit-down, despite being no evidence of journalistic malpractice. He accused the news magazine of doing. And at this meeting, Shell requested that McMahon and Owens comply with Trump's demand and release the transcript. That's according to people familiar with the matter. Shell's involvement in the editorial matter immediately set off alarm bells, and McMahon and Owens, they later told associates they were disturbed that Shell was inserting himself into newsroom decision-making, given the Paramount's merger with Skydance is yet to close and that corporate interference in journalistic matters is traditionally a no-no. Even more troubling, Shell seemed to believe CBS News should have simply appeased Trump despite the dangerous precedent it would set. This is one of the legacy news media outlets. And the guy that stands to potentially be the next leader of Paramount is saying, capitulate to Trump. It's right there, out in the open. You don't have to wonder. When we come forward, we are digging into a great conversation with a very special guest. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. Who cares about the Black community in Altadena? We do. On Saturday, March 8th at 10 a.m., it's the premiere of Conversation Live, Altadena Rising with James Farr. This new weekly show will explore the deep roots and resilience of Altadena's Black community as we track its recovery and reimagine its future. From relief efforts to rebuilding, we're raising up voices, stories, and solutions to build back Black Altadena better and stronger than ever. It's Conversation Live, Altadena Rising with James Farr every Saturday at 10 a.m. beginning Saturday, March 8th with an encore presentation, Sundays at noon.
James Farr, the man who is the voice for Black Los Angeles.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-550-9651. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems. We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com or call 800-550-9651. That's 800-550-9651. Tax Relief Advocates, real solutions for real people.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. The Live Your Life organization mentors young women, helping them break negative mindsets and see beyond their surroundings. Through career exposure and hands-on training, they're encouraged to think big, stay focused, and make positive choices. Founded by Nikisha Mama Boo Smith, who transformed her life to become a community leader. Live Your Life is changing lives, but they need your help. They're raising funds to keep their new building open and expand their programs. Your donations will support food, clothes, hygiene products, and holiday giveaways. Visit liveyourlife32.com. That's LIVEYOLIFE32.com to help today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hit me! National news The Consequence. Informed opinion. And analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai and really delighted to welcome my next guest, Sharif El-Mekki. He
Close.
El-Mekki, excuse me, Sharif
No worries.
El-Mekki, who is the founder and CEO of the Center for Black Educator Development. And for those of you who are less familiar, it's an organization that is dedicated to restoring the Black teacher pipeline. It's available. The importance of the Black teacher pipeline cannot be overstated. As a Black educator myself, when I'm off the airwaves, this is critically important. And so you can only imagine that all the headlines that are swirling about the Department of Education, now under the Trump administration, really fly in the face of so much work that Black educators have done for generations. Welcome, Sharif.
Thank you, Dr. Quartelai.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Talk to us about how the work of the Center for Black Educator Development has changed in the past 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, it's really sad that we're at this point, but at the end of the day, we're still focused on rebuilding a national Black teacher pipeline, despite whoever occupies the White House or whatever crusade they happen to be on. It doesn't change the fact that Black student outcomes are impacted significantly in a positive way when they have more Black teachers. Black teachers have historically contributed mightily to the educational ecosystem writ large, how to teach, how to communicate, how to hold high expectations. And so we're still maintaining focus on that, but we are, at the same time, paying close attention to what's happening in the policy space.
And for people who are less familiar, orient us to some of the unique opportunities and challenges for Black educators, because there's a movement out there that suggests that organizations like yours don't need to exist, that you could just be the Center for Educator Development. There's no need to focus on Black folks. What do you say to those folks?
That people are often, when they misunderstand history and how it plays into the current context, they misunderstand why there's a need for some race-based solutions, because there were race-based policies that undermined the progress of this country writ large. And because of that, you can't ignore that and just think everything is starting at a similar level, or that there's equity involved. Just particular examples of this: after Brown versus Board of Education, which many celebrate as a laudable, decision by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1954, about 100,000 Black educators were either fired or demoted during that time, where states and school districts said, okay, we have to take the Black children, but we're going to close the Black schools and we're going to fire the Black teachers. They cannot teach white children. And so from that time, there's continued to be a deficit of Black educators, even in places like Philadelphia. From 2000 to 2020, less people think that this only happened in the 50s. From 2000 to 2020, Philadelphia alone, a diverse city, 8th largest in the country, we lost over 1,000 Black educators, Black teachers, mind you. So those teach in the classrooms. And so when you look at that, we have students who may never see teachers who look like them. Mm-hmm. And we often say that, and research bears out, Black teachers are absolutely necessary for Black students, but they're great for all students. They're great for other educators who have no familiarity with Black students. And so that allows a more just, a more comprehensive, a more rigorous intellectual educational system when Black educators are involved.
I mean, just hearing you say that makes me think about my own experience. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a Black teacher until my AP US history class sophomore year in high school. And that was a private school.
And they let them teach AP history. So even that's very different, because they often don't get to teach the rigorous courses. And students like you are not often invited into those courses as well.
Yeah. And she also doubled as my high school counselor. Shout out to Mrs. Delahousse. And then I didn't have my next Black educator until graduate school.
Wow.
Until graduate school. And so just this past election cycle, when Vice President Harris was running and she, unveiled the opportunity agenda for Black men, One of the areas of focus was around investing in more Black male teachers. Talk to us about how much of a game changer that could have been.
Yeah, absolutely. And your experience is very similar to so many young Black students, and particularly young Black men, where they may go through the entire 13 years and not experience what does it mean to have a classroom led by, someone who looks like them and understands their culture and values and so forth. So, the research continues to indicate that a Black student with a Black teacher has significantly better outcomes. And they've looked at this short term, they looked at it long term. And meaning short term, meaning that year, that student will have better grades, better test scores, higher attendance, communication between home and school will be improved. The student will be actually held to higher standards. Like the teacher will have higher expectations for their Black children. And then they also looked at over the years, they started following, okay, that child, how do they fare against students who did not have Black teachers? That same Black student versus, who had Black teachers, comparing that to Black students who did not have Black teachers. Long term, they showed that student was more likely to go to graduate high school and more likely to enroll in college. And when we look at Black men in particular, I was invited into the profession not until after I graduated college. But then I realized that, less than 2% of public school teachers in America are Black men. And that right now is about 1.3%. It fluctuates here and there between 1.3 and 2%. Rare do you find it nationally where it's higher than 2%. And when we look at the outcomes that I just named, and the research is pretty robust and rigorous that people can look into, particularly around student outcomes and graduation and college enrollment, this is having more diverse educators, including Black men, is one of the most important interventions that we can have to improve student outcomes. Everyone says, oh, we're struggling, we're pulling our hair out, we can't figure out how to improve student outcomes. Well, here's one of those ways. And that is the sole reason why we created and are leading this organization.
And so just to make it crystal clear for our leaders, learners, and listeners, we had a candidate for president and very different from any other Democratic candidate I've seen run for president in recent years, really unveiling a specific agenda around opportunity for Black men, including investing in more Black male teachers. Compare that to the Black agenda, I think it's called the Platinum Agenda, that then candidate Trump rolled out. And more importantly, compare that to some of the early actions that we're seeing coming out of the U.S. Department of Education.
Yeah, well, you can see one is about just intellectualism and looking at a problem, a situation, say, how do we address this? How do we address the lack? One, there's a teacher shortage, period, right? So one is like, how do we increase the number of people who would be interested in leading our classrooms full of children? How do we ensure that we diversify? How do we connect the research around the impact of Black teachers and add it to the problem solving that we need and the leadership that we need for our country? On the other side of this continuum, we have, yes, we have a teacher shortage, but let's make it less attractive for diverse candidates, particularly Black youth, to become teachers. Let's make it more problematic for them to teach accurate history. Let's make it more less effective for them to be supported across the country. So you have two different ways to think about a problem and address a problem. One is actually using research and the current climate of the teacher shortage that we have right now. The other is really just creating more chaos and less supports for the most critical profession that we have in this country.
Do you think some of the more recent actions of the Trump administration, you think the confirmation of Linda McMahon now as the Secretary of Education, do you think this will essentially force a lot of could-be Black educators out of the profession?
I think it will address both the retention issue of keeping them, where they will decide to leave. And I think will also impact the pipeline to recruit, where if I'm a college student and I'm, a freshman in college, and over the next 4 years, these are the type of things I'm witnessing, this will not make the teaching profession more attractive to me. It'll make it less attractive, as well as those who are already in it. And if you're being told to, oh yeah, you can stay, but shrink yourself, erase yourself, lie about history, delete the things that are important to help students become critically conscious, empathetic, and conscientious, delete all of that from your unit maps and lesson plans, that is not very enticing for an educator. And so this is why we have to continue to elevate this conversation. So I appreciate you, not only being in tune to it, but also giving the space and platform to further the discussion about this. So just again, thank you, because this is absolutely important for our next generation of not only educators, but the students who will be in front of them.
Well, thank you for the work that you're doing, and you're working smart, and that's exactly why you are responding to how Trump's education department has just launched an anti-DEI portal to solicit supposed discrimination claims. This is the latest in the administration's regressive agenda. This is a move that could potentially open the door to attacks against well-intended educators who are accurately and honestly sharing information on race and equity. It could even stifle the ability to hire women, teachers of color, and as we've been talking about, have a negative impact on the education profession at large. When we come forward, I want to learn how the Center for Black Educator Development is fighting back, pushing back as they continue to navigate the onslaught of attacks. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered about issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, you've tuned into the right place. A More Perfect Union continues when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. President Trump's address to a joint session of Congress is just hours away. He posted the quote, "Night will be big," end quote, and he will quote, "Tell it like it is," end quote. You can listen in here live on the Black Information Network starting at 9 p.m. A recall effort against Black Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass is underway, reportedly led by Republicans. Bass' strategist calls it a quote, "right-wing stunt," end quote. She's faced criticism for her absence during recent wildfires. Massachusetts officials are ordering Southwick Regional Schools to make changes after a weak response to racist incidents, including an online slave auction post. The district must revise its bullying policies, but has made progress with a student-led anti-bias program. And HBCU Howard University's alternative spring break has kicked off with 1,300 students dedicating their break to service locally and across more than 12 states. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Tough in Mid-City with a crash on the 10 eastbound before Western. Second lane from the left is blocked, and delays are backing up out of Santa Monica, getting away from Centinela. The westbound side of the 10, that's in decent shape, just a little crowded approaching the 405. We're also heading out to Santa Ana. A crash on the 5 northbound before the 5722. Out of lanes in the center divider, delays out of Irvine away from Sand Canyon. And it's tough along the 15 in the Mariloma area. A crash past Limonite. Looks like it's out of lanes now, and delays are backing up all the way from Hidden Valley Parkway.
The CONCACAF Nations League finals arrive at SoFi Stadium March 20th through the 23rd. USA versus Panama, followed by Canada versus Mexico. Get your tickets now on Ticketmaster. For more information, visit CONCACAFNationsLeague.com/tickets.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers' defense has been a big part of the team's 6-game winning streak. During the streak, the Lakers are averaging 8.7 steals and 4.8 block shots. The Lakers are going for their 7th straight win tonight against New Orleans at Crypto.com. The Lakers will be missing 2 starters. Austin Reeves has a calf strain, and Rui Hachimura has a hyperextended knee. The Clippers are at Phoenix tonight. More bad news for the Dallas Mavericks and their fan base. They lost Luka Doncic to the Lakers last month. Tuesday morning, the Mavericks found out that All-Star guard Kyrie Irving will miss the rest of the season with a torn ACL in his left knee. On top of that, Anthony Davis, the player Doncic was traded for, is still recovering from a strained abductor muscle. AD has played only 3 quarters for the Mavericks since the monumental trade on February 2nd. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
I feel so alone. I'm embarrassed to talk about it.
How can I help my kid if I can't help myself?
I can't remember when I wasn't stressed.
I don't like being inside. When you feel overwhelmed by your thoughts and emotions, it's okay to get help. You are not alone. CalHope is here for you with free, safe, and confidential mental health resources for youth, young adults, families, and you. Find support now at calhope.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
Now back to building a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm delighted to be in conversation with Sharif El-Mekki. He is the CEO for the Center for Black Educator Development. And we've been talking about the teacher pipeline and how they're building the teacher pipeline, particularly the Black teacher pipeline, even in light of the onslaught of scrutiny and attacks that educators are experiencing across the country, with what is revealing itself to be a very hostile administration, particularly to educators of color. Tonight is President Trump's joint address to Congress. We're just a few hours away from that. I'll be watching, as I'm sure many of you may very well be watching. I understand how some people may want to turn away. Some people want to turn it off. I certainly encourage people to have a line of sight to what's going on. Protect your peace, but have a line of sight. You ain't got to watch it, but you should read about it, but be engaged. But Sharif, I want to ask you, what do you want to hear from President Trump in tonight's address, and what don't you want to hear in tonight's presidential address to Congress with regard to the work that you do to support the Black Teacher Pipeline?
Yeah, I think, any of the rhetoric that further divides or spreads misinformation, I think is just not only inappropriate, but very damaging to, again, the educational space. And we need this to be one of the strongest sectors in this country. When you're talking about investing in the future, it's our children, and it's those who lead the classrooms that our children are in. Any policy, any rhetoric, any divisiveness that undermines student achievement, undermines more educators becoming interested and not only entering the profession, but staying, is immensely problematic. And so those are all the things that I would not want to hear or see. Yet I'm not optimistic that that's not what will be shared tonight and moving forward. And so I do think that is why it's important, around advocacy and community. And a particular part of advocacy that we really try to uplift is student voices. How students are experiencing not only the Trump's candidacy, but his presidency, and how that relates to how they're experiencing their classrooms, because these policies will have an impact on their achievement. It will have an impact on their sense of belongingness. It will have an impact on their awareness of accurate history.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's having an impact right now, even just in what schools young people may choose to enroll in. Certainly after that Supreme Court decision that has impacted affirmative action and other race conscious, equity conscious policies in higher ed and K through 12 ed across the country. Talk to us about this DEI portal, and for folks who may be less familiar, Trump's education department, they just launched this anti-DEI portal to solicit supposed discrimination claims. I've also heard stories from friends here in Washington, D.C., who have ended up on some sort of DEI watch list. There's lots of different DEI watch lists out there where they're actually putting people's personal information out there on these watch lists. They're taking screenshots of posts that people put up on social media platforms like LinkedIn. They're putting people's resume information out there. And in my view, creating a surveillance system when it comes to folks that are doing any sort of social justice work. I mean, DEI has become shorthand for all things social justice related, all things in the business of raising consciousness. Talk to us about this anti-DEI portal launched by the U.S. Department of Education.
Right. Yeah. So this isn't some fringe group who's just harassing educators who are talking about racial and social and economic justice. This is the United States government. And it reminds me of a outward COINTELPRO, so to speak, where they're saying like, hey, we're going to over police, over surveil, and it really in the lines of McCarthyism, where everyone was a communist. And even if they weren't, anything that we didn't agree with was, part of the Communist Party. That's, and when the writers of some of these policies for Donald Trump, when they say themselves, hey, we want to make certain terms toxic to the touch. And so they take terms like culturally responsive teaching, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they want to make it toxic. And then they want to deputize. So it's really like a posse. This is an online posse, where they used to go deputize people and just say, hey, we're going to go and lynch someone, regardless of whether they were innocent or not. This is the same type of mentality. And we are accustomed, when we study history, we know that progress is often, for racial progress, is often undermined with white backlash. And this is just another example, wholly and fully and full-throated endorsement by the United States government. Again, right? Because we've seen some of these angles of this in the past.
Yeah, we sure have, in an ugly past that is. In our final moments, I want to give you an opportunity to, further put this in context. This website, it comes as there's a Trump deadline that's looming for ending discrimination in schools, which includes banning race-conscious policies on college campuses. Talk to us about this distortion that is afoot, this distortion that is about ending discrimination, when in fact what it is encouraging it, it's pouring into it. And more importantly, talk to us about how the Center for Black Educator Development is fighting back, is pushing back, and what can our leaders, learners, and listeners do to support that effort?
No, absolutely. Thank you for that question. This portal positions citizens to whatever they don't like, whatever they don't want to hear, to report a teacher who's actually, is likely doing, if they're talking about some of these issues and they're talking about accurate history, that means they're doing their job. So now we're being surveilled and reported on for doing their job. And so I think, the interesting part of discrimination, just as you laid out, Black youth already face discrimination in schools. They face it by people who are leading classroom schools and districts. They face it in the curriculum. They face this, anti-Blackness that's pretty pervasive in our systems when we look at it. And research bears this out, that a young Black child as early as 3 and 4 years old experiences their teacher's racial biases. 3 and 4 years old. And it doesn't get better when they turn 13 and 14. It continues. And so to kind of flip that and say, oh no, if you talk about the experiences, that different perspectives of this American project, different experiences and entry points into becoming citizens or still fighting to become full citizens in this country, then you're being discriminatory. So right there, the hypocrisy of that is pretty compelling and infuriating. I think, one of the things that we look at is education is also the backbone for advocacy and making sure that students are aware. Sometimes in order to protect our students, we hide some of the policies that are occurring, whether it's school funding or whether it's this portal. And I think we should be, and obviously depending on the age of the child, we should have these conversations, and not just in schools, in our communities. We should make sure that people are aware of, here's this portal that is being used to police your child's teacher. Here are the accurate history that they want to erase, where they want our students to be less critically, conscious. And here's how we're going to combat that. Because I think some of the things that we do to combat these type of things has to be outside the school walls. It has to be in our communities. And we saw it with SNCC, with Freedom Schools. We saw it with other organizers who educate, whether in the church and masajids, basements and pews. We can continue, because everywhere is a classroom, actually. And so even if they continue to shut this down, we have to make sure that, back in the day, they said, each one, reach one, teach one. Now, like platforms like yours, each one can reach and teach thousands. And so we've seen this. We've already seen people rising up and using their social media platforms, for example, their convening powers to educate, to share information, to make sure that they're addressing misinformation. And we have to make sure our students are a part of that. This is an intergenerational approach that we must take, not just the elders with grayed hair. No, the students who are actually experiencing it are the most important voices right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. And everywhere is a classroom. And each and every day on this show, we end every show by telling our leaders, learners, and listeners to do what you can from where you are with what you have. It's an organizing principle I learned when I was a baby student organizer on the campus of the University of Southern California. And I never forgot it. It was Willis Edwards, who was a national board member at the NAACP, who taught me that. and I never forgot it. And so every day I make it my business to pass that on. And clearly I'm not alone, because the Center for Black Educator Development is doing exactly the same.
Yes, no, absolutely. That's a great point, doing what we can. And this is, we started inviting our youth into considering becoming the teachers. And some of them, I remember these young men, we had a focus group about like what would even inspire them to lead classrooms. And, our friend Dr. Chris Emden often says, like, inviting young Black youth to become teachers is sometimes like inviting someone to return to the scene of a crime committed against themselves because of what they experienced. And so this focus group of young Black men, you know what they said? They said, I'm actually going to consider becoming the teacher that I wish I had and knew I needed.
Wow.
And that, them saying they're out of the mouth of babes, even though he was a teenager, that continues to inspire me to continue to work hard, invite them into the profession, and share. Here's how Black educators like Mary McLeod Bethune and Dr. Carter G. Woodson, here's how they talked about teaching and learning in our communities. Here's what they showed was effective ways of learning and teaching, and continuing to expose our youth as well as veteran educators to these principles, to these competencies, but not just, that we believe is a part of rebuilding a Black teacher pipeline. Like, how have Black educators historically thought about teaching and leading successfully in our classrooms effectively with love, compassion, rigor, and cultural responsiveness? That is good teaching, period. But it also means it's also good leadership.
That's right.
And that's what we're inviting people to join us in.
Where can people go to be a part of the movement to support the Black teacher pipeline?
Absolutely. Our youth, our high schoolers came up with a campaign, #WeNeedBlackTeachers. So we're like, oh, we're going to invite you to become one. They're like, yeah, we're going to become what we know we need right now. So #WeNeedBlackTeachers. We're on all the social media platforms at Center Black Ed, and our website is www.thecenterblacked.org. We welcome the community to continue to support us and support the youth and the next generation, but as well as the veteran educators that we need them to be there as mentors, supporters, and leaders in this space, despite the hostility that they're facing. But they should not be alone, and they are not alone.
We appreciate you. We appreciate your work. Sharif El-Mekki, the CEO for the Center for Black Educator Development. Please, please, please come back again soon.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your work, and I appreciate you as a fellow educator as well in this space.
Absolutely. You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. The quiet part out loud when we come forward.
Striving to make America a nation as good as its promise. This is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
They say the hardest part of getting something done is getting started. Well, we did that 30 years ago when California first took on the tobacco industry. Now, smoking is down 60%, lung cancer 42%. A couple of our cities have already ended tobacco sales. A California without big tobacco isn't just possible, it's already happening. See our progress at undo.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds. Learning new things comes with age.
My mom? She started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
We face tragedy, but we don't fall into despair. We continue our work to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. That was a wonderful conversation with Sharif El-Mekki. Again, he's the founder and CEO of the Center for Black Educator Development. And while we're on the topic of Black educators, I saw this article in the New York Times and absolutely had to share it with y'all. The headline read, "A Black Studies curriculum is defiantly rolling out in New York City." You've heard me say this before, that as we buckle up and prepare for whatever it is that is coming with the transition of power in this country, we have an opportunity to feed the fear or feed our imagination. Feed the fear or feed that sense of radical imagination, I should say. And I think what's happening in New York City is a great example of this. You see, late last fall at the Hugo Newman School in Harlem, 2 social studies teachers handed out pages of hip hop lyrics in their to their seventh graders, and then they flicked off the lights. As you can imagine, the students appeared surprised. They had been studying ancient matriarchal societies, including the Iroquois communities that had women as leaders, and now their teachers were about to play the song "Ladies First" by Queen Latifah and Moni Love. All right, now the teachers instructed their students to highlight any lyrics that reminded them of the Iroquois women who were known as a part of a special clan of mothers. Now, although they didn't know it, the middle schoolers were in the midst of their first lesson of Black studies as the study of the world, a curriculum that rolled out in September and is now available to every New York City public school. The curriculum, which spans from pre-K to 12th grade, covers early African civilizations, Black American history, and the achievement and contributions of the African diaspora. The curriculum emphasizes what's known as culturally relevant teaching, an approach meant to help students connect their own lives with what they're learning. Isn't it funny how Sharif over at the Center for Black Educator Development was just talking about culturally relevant teaching? Well, it's been used by dozens of schools across the city since the last school year to little fanfare. But the Trump administration has moved aggressively in its first weeks to ban programs related to diversity and equity across government, including in schools. Local school districts have traditionally been insulated from interference from the federal government. So New York's curriculum and similar efforts to bring discussions about race and history in schools could test those lines and how far the Trump administration might go to enforce its edicts. Already, many K-12 educators, including The architects of New York City's new Black Studies curriculum appear defiant. Defiant. We have an opportunity to acquiesce or to defy. And it's not an easy choice for everyone. It requires courage. In some cases, you have people putting their bodies on the line. In some cases, you have people putting their livelihoods on the line. For people that said, oh, well, you know, if I were around back during the civil rights movement or the women's liberation movement or the anti-war movement or the gay rights movement, I would have done. Now's your moment. Buckle up. Everyone gets to decide how they're going to participate, if they're going to participate at all. And so hat tip to the Black educators in New York City public schools that are tapping in, and in this case, choosing to be defiant in the name of making sure that a Black Studies curriculum is available to all New York City public schoolers that want to learn. You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. The Vatican says Pope Francis remains stable with no new health crisis. He's alert on high-flow oxygen and receiving treatment for bronchitis and pneumonia. The Pope, who has long urged Black Catholics to resist discrimination, has been hospitalized for over 2 weeks. New York officials want Optimum to refund customers